You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We live F1. Welcome to Missed Apex Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Reddy, but my friends call me Spanners. So, let's be friends. Welcome to our Saudi Arabian Grand Prix race review. Of course, I've got to start by telling you that we have two Saturday events coming up for Grand Prix. We have the Silverstone Grand Prix and we have the Miami Grand Prix, where we're going to be having meetups on the Saturday. So for Miami, it's the 3rd of May. All you have to do is email me spanners@missedapex.net, and then after qualifying, head 20 minutes south and I will give you all the details that you need to know. But doors open at 7, and then we'll be recording and doing live stuff from 8 till 10, live quiz, sprint review, all the good stuff. And then for Silverstone, 5th of July, we'll have a little bit of karting and a live panel. So again, email me spanners@missedapex.net. Today was a fairly interesting race. We got a safety car, which did nothing. We had tyre strategy, which also did nothing because the tyres all lasted so well. But we did get lap 1 drama. We did get overtakes and we did get some racing. It was fine. So coming up, we'll discuss why this was not a good episode of Lando. I am starting to fear that he has the yips. Basic things are not going well since the Australian Grand Prix. Piastri continues to arm his fans with ammo to come at poor Uncle Spanners, who's just trying his best. But kudos to Piastri fans. It's looking super sunny for the Piastrifosi. Enjoy it. Bathe in it. He did 8 things. I think he did 8 things that were pretty good and maybe 2 things wrong this weekend. So I am very impressed. I'm also impressed with the Ferrari progress. It's back to a default competitive baseline, but only on one side of the garage. And also Red Bull continue to frustrate me on both sides of the garage. And I continue to be impressed with Russell in that 4th fastest Mercedes. We are an independent podcast produced in the podcasting shed with the kind support of our patrons and partners. We aim to bring you a race review before your Monday morning commute. We might be wrong, but we're first. I'm joined by a bit of a legend in the making, YouTuber Scott Stuffeyy Tuffy. How's it going, Scott?
Hey, Spanners. I'm doing very well, thank you. Saudi Arabia, it left a little bit to be desired, to be honest with you. Saturday, for me, was just so much more exciting than Sunday, and I think that's going to be the story for the rest of the season.
And we're also joined fresh back from Dutch adventures by Antonia Rankin. Hello, Antonia.
Hi, I'm really excited to be making a comeback with the sole purpose of telling you how wrong you are.
About what? Don't say
Most
everything.
of your opinions, but that's okay. That's okay. I'll be the voice of the listeners.
That's okay. As we've established over 9 years, I don't think any of this project is dependent on me being correct, which is fine. But let's talk about the race in general, because when Scott was saying you were downplaying it a little bit, Antonia seemed surprised. So I think, Antonia, maybe you have the best overall impression of this Grand Prix.
I think not only is Jeddah an underrated circuit, but it provided a lot of insight and confirmed a lot of suspicions that fans have been discoursing about for a very long time. There's 3 key takeaways for me. First, that Piastri overall is the strongest driver on the grid right now, considering his racecraft and his package on his car. Right. I nearly said his package. Second of all, that Lando...
Okay, let's be clear. You didn't nearly say it. You just literally said it. So welcome. Thank you. You're just, if we
You're
ever...
so welcome.
If we
You're
miss
so welcome.
Christian at any point, at least we have Antonia. Anyway, point 2.
Second, that Lando Norris, as it stands, doesn't have what it takes to be the world champion. And most disappointingly, that Lewis Hamilton cannot, for the life of him, get to grips with that Ferrari.
I think they are all very interesting points. And I think maybe we just shoot in and we just let that lead our agenda, to be honest. So let's start with Piastri then. Why is Piastri here's your words. You said the best driver, and then you very quickly caveated it to be, best driver car combination.
I think when you speak about any driver within the scope of any motorsports, you have to consider the car that they're driving. Obviously, you can be a Max Verstappen in a Haas, you're not going to be winning races. At the moment, to me, Oscar Piastri has the full package. Not only do they have the strongest car on the grid overall at the moment, but he can keep such a cool head. He barely shows a single emotion whilst in the car. I've spoken to him outside of the car. He doesn't show many there either, but that's not the point. And in a race scenario, he always makes the correct decision, not just for himself, but for the overall strategy of the team. He's communicative on the radio and he executes everything to a T. And that's where Lando Norris misses out.
Okay, so versus Lando, that's fine. But if you think that the McLaren was the fastest overall car, then why didn't Piastri get pole?
Because Max Verstappen is an absolute god. I'm going to say it.
I'm going to slightly disagree there while Max put in a tremendous lap.
Out of order.
Max got pole position because he got help from his teammate. His lap was brilliant. However, if anyone has seen the Ghost comparison lap, I highly recommend you check it out. Verstappen is great on the brakes, but he got an advantage from the toe down a start-finish straight from Yuki Tsunoda that gave him a head start in that first sector, which ultimately, with it being 100th of a second separating them for pole, that was the fine margin that got him it. And Piastri actually did get ahead of Max towards the end of the lap. Max was a brilliant last corner and it won in pole position. But without Yuki's toe, he still would have been behind Piastri. And that's why Piastri was really calm and said, look, my lap was good. I was happy with it. There's not much more I can do. And that's the nature of having been a number one driver in a team and having a teammate who's willing to give you a toe. Whereas McLaren wouldn't be so kind to do that, because I'm sure we will get onto Lando in a very short moment, but they're not going to give each other a toe because they're in competition with each other. But it's still a great lap, but the Red Bull is still a very quick car, just in certain environments.
I don't necessarily think that that's why Lando didn't give him the toe. I think Lando didn't give him the toe because he was so focused on getting his own lap that he ended up in the wall and needed a literal toe out of it. I think that's something that McLaren would have done given how powerful the slipstream was at Jeddah, had they been given the opportunity to do so. I agree there is a lot of competition though between Lando and Piastri, and that's why the debate about which of the two is stronger is so prevalent at the moment, because McLaren need to choose a top driver who they are going to prioritise in these quali scenarios.
Well, I think the argument, there's not much of an argument right now, because Lando was looking pretty good after Australia, and it looked like it might be business as usual, so he can qualify ahead and was just on top of it. But the fact that Norris has fallen apart in the last two races and Piastri hasn't, it doesn't tell us anything about the battle between the two, but it's really hard to get away from, well, Piastri is doing the job. And Norris, like I said in the intro, he's got the yips. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the yips, but it's when an athlete just stops being able to do the very basic things. So it's not one error. It's not like Tsunoda this weekend who has biffed it into Gasly. You can argue with me if you want. But if we look over the last weekends, each weekend we can point to like 4, 5, 6, 7 areas where he's left stuff on the table. Like, this is a chronic issue with performance with Norris right now. Antonia, then Stuffeyy.
I totally agree, but I don't think it's a new thing. If we cast our minds back to the fated Sochi race in the wet, where Lando completely spun out because he refused to acknowledge the team's recommended strategy onto the wet tyres. I actually think this is a systemic pattern with Lando, where we excused it when he was less experienced and we can no longer excuse it as the seasons go on. I made a video about this because whether it's luck, whether it's fate itself stepping in, or whether, Lando does not have what it takes fundamentally to be the world champion, there is an established pattern of something always just not being quite right, and we excused it when he was less experienced, but in his 6th season now, there's not a lot that we can say that isn't an excuse for him anymore.
Okay, so we've got some pushback in the live chat. Maria says, he's not just fallen apart. Mark says it's a couple of mistakes. Let's not go crazy. Stuffeyy.
Well, the problem is that a couple of mistakes now with the fine margins that the whole grid has. I mean, we saw 17 cars separated by less than a second at the end of Q1 yesterday. And Lando in a championship where it is going to be a qualifying championship. It's 5 races in now. Lando has made multiple mistakes in qualifying, which has cost him his race result. Piastri, fair play to the lad. He made one mistake. He's made one mistake, which was in changeable conditions, which anyone could have done. And he still managed to recover and score points. He was 20 points behind after Melbourne. He's now leading by 10. He's won 3 races out of 5, okay, excluding the sprint race. But that is phenomenal. That is a phenomenal response from Piastri, and he's been calm and collected, and he hasn't actually made a single mistake in qualifying. And even when he's been out qualified, he's still been starting on 3rd. Norris hasn't. We have a go at Hamilton, Lewis for his qualifying mistakes, or just not being quick enough.
You
really.
do, hater. Yeah, you.
Shut up. I'm the one with the Hamilton poster here. I am a Hamilton fan, but it showcases that this current era of F1, or where we are with this current regs, is that qualifying is where it matters. And Norris, unfortunately for him, he continues to put himself under considerable amount of pressure when it comes to qualifying. This is the first time where he hasn't had I say a bank lap here, but his first lap every single time is not quick enough. And he just makes mistakes, and he's always putting himself under considerably more pressure in that final lap. And
he didn't get the final lap, did he?
Exactly. This time around, it's even worse because he binned it. So
on the banker lap.
On the banker lap, and that's the problem. Whereas Piastri gets that banker lap in, and at worst case, he's still going to be on the front 3, which is where he should be.
Ranko.
My issue is exactly what Stuffeyy is saying. Every single session matters, because if you give Verstappen an inch, he will take it and turn it into a race win. The question isn't, should we be giving Lando the benefit of the doubt? It's how much is Max and his other opponents going to maximize on every single little error? So yeah, even if you do say, okay, it's only been a couple of mistakes, which I think is overly generous. It's been quite I agree. It's been quite a few. You cannot afford to make these mistakes, because if you put yourself in the position of you're watching the race, Max Verstappen is chasing Lando versus Max Verstappen is chasing Piastri. Who are you trusting to get that race win home? And watching the race today, it wasn't a shadow of a doubt for me that as Piastri came into turn 1, if he stuck it, he would win the race.
So I was looking at, obviously in practice and stuff and in qualifying, it did seem, and I think I'm not alone, people were saying Norris looked the faster of the two in qualifying and, in the build up to qualifying. And everyone was also saying that McLaren was going to just walk away with this race today. It didn't walk away, it did win, and it didn't get pole, but people were talking about how far it would be dominating, not whether it would be dominating. So I feel like what we're getting at the moment is with Norris's yips and Norris's mistakes. I'm going to call it yips. I'm going to settle on yips. And Norris is having a nightmare right now. Still, though, his overall performance has the potential to be higher than Piastri's. Piastri is cruising along. And if we say that McLaren was touted as the best car into qualifying and Verstappen got pole, then Piastri must have left a little something on the table, maybe a little scruffy out the final turn on that qualifying lap. And maybe, though, it is sensible to go about your season going, let's just keep going for the high percentage shots. So, if you're in golf, you just go, right, shall I hit my 5-iron off the tee? Shall I make sure that I'm on the fairway? Or shall I go for that glory 300-yard, drive every time? Stuffey, you're a golfer. I think maybe that's what's happening. Piastri is looking at it and hitting his wood off the tee. Whereas
your golf analogies are bang on.
Nice.
With the hips and the shots. It's match play. It's good old-fashioned match play. You play your opponents. Now, Piastri has had different opponents kind of each race weekend. One weekend it's been Verstappen. One weekend it's been Norris. But he's realistically, with that peaky Red Bull, and I think McLaren internally probably see this, the overall championship rival for him is his teammate. So if he's sticking it on the front row, while of course he wants to win races, he's sticking it on the front row and he knows his teammate is down in 6th with it all to do to get on the podium, and today in 10th, and he did a good job, Lando, to recover, but it just shows what could have been for him. So it's a bittersweet result. He's just doing that right. He's playing the percentage game. He's playing his opponent, and he knows that if he even finishes on the top 2 positions, he's going to have enough points because Lando is his own worst enemy at the moment. And that's why sometimes you don't always go for the birdie. You go for the par. You do what you need to do to win the hole and to win the match. And that's what Piastri at the moment is doing.
You've got to scramble. You've got to get up and down. If you miss that green, you've got to get up and down.
But Piastri, though, isn't scrambling. He is making those birdies. I mean, today, Antonia's already mentioned it. That
Antonia's losing it on the golf.
I wasn't sure.
There's a reason I'm not on a golf podcast.
Antonia, you're long, though. You must play golf.
Why does this keep coming up?
You've got the levers.
Why do you keep calling me long?
Because you're really long. You've got the levers to play golf. If you're not playing golf, that is a missed opportunity.
Can I go back to my point?
Yeah, also, Antonia had some F1 stuff.
On track here. Guys, if you're listening, I'm trying to keep him on track. I'm trying my best. Piastri down into turn 1. I didn't know at the time, before this race began, which side first place was starting on. And I think everyone, myself included, was saying whoever starts on that inside line with the ahead of the apex rule is going to have that advantage into turn 1 because of how tight turn 1 is and how often we see drivers just go to the escape road there. And Piastri just showed he is not going to be bossed around.
Can I give like a super controversial opinion actually about this turn 1 incident?
Do you want to go to the turn 1 incident? Okay, let's go there. Let's go there. Let's do it.
Whilst we're here.
Let's do it. Let's focus.
I can completely understand from Max's perspective why he thought he had that corner. If you look at the very specific onboard, that one shot that Christian Horner keeps waving around as evidence, I can see from his perspective why he would think he has grounds to argue that he was in front of the apex. He obviously was not, as the stewards agree, and I completely think that was Piastri's corner, 100%. But looking at the onboards, as the driver, I think I can see why Max thought that he had ground to argue there. I don't, however, think that the team made the right call in not looking at any single other thing and rightfully telling Max, no, you need to give this position back.
Oh, no, I don't. Red Bull are not a team that gives the position back.
Then they get 5-second penalties and they can suck it up and whinge on the radio.
Suck it up, buttercup.
Womp,
they have
womp,
done post-race as well.
So Christian Horner's been touting this photo where he's trying to prove. Scott, look at Scott's reaction. But he's got like a post.
I thought it was someone posted this to me, and I genuinely thought it was a Photoshop.
No. He's actually been going
so many times.
Yeah.
With like telemetry, and I thought this is Photoshop. I had to go and find another source for this, and there's various people tweeting it, like reputable journalists.
Yeah, Medland.
If I murder someone, I want Christian Horner in my corner because he will back me.
It's the fact he has a little ring of journalists around him and he's like, no, but look.
If I'm his driver and he sees me commit a literal crime in person, he will blatantly lie for me. That's what he does for Max Verstappen. I mean, credit where it's due. He will die on the hill for Max. And he'll never tell him he's in the wrong, and he never has done.
The thing is, outboard, he showed an onboard, but outboard photos exist. So for me, if you want to claim this rule of if you're ahead at the apex, you can pull out an RPG and explode the other driver. That seems to be the thing that was happening last season. If you're ahead at the apex, nothing else matters. Brackets, so long as you make the corner. But for me, if you look at some stills, and I've tweeted it, so follow me, Spanners Ready, on Blue Sky or on X, I've got a screenshot of that first turn. So to me, I think the apex line that we're all talking about is 45 degrees from the straight. So as you come down the straight, say the turn is 90 degrees, then from me, the apex, you go 45 degrees to the outside, you've got a diagonal line, that's the apex line. Max Verstappen is not ahead at all until you get way, way past the apex. So in any case, I don't think Horner has any grounds here.
This is where I totally agree. But again, I can see why, with a distorted idea of where that apex might be, especially from the cockpit, Max is throwing a bit of a strop. But with any reasonable trackside strategist, someone sat on that pit wall, they should have been able to tell Max to give that position back. I know we're saying Red Bull would never do that, but it objectively would have been the better move for the team. They wouldn't have had the penalty, and Max no doubt would have been able to contest that position. It just comes down to a clear cut of what would the better idea have been. It's so simple to me, and I don't understand why this is the hill of all hills they've chosen to die on.
This is all just very ironic and quite comical to me, because this is what Max Verstappen has made a living of doing, is pulling off this exact type of move. I'm ahead at the apex. The whole racing rules have been now implemented, and racing guidelines are the way they are to accommodate Max's style of driving. This is what Red Bull have introduced into the sport, and someone else has finally used that against him. And I still have issues with the penalty itself, because I don't think 5 seconds and him not having to give the position back is anywhere near suitable.
Let Antonia in, because her arms
I'm so excited to
You're
talk about
blow
it.
a rotator cuff with the amount you're waving your arms around right now.
Oh, don't say that, because I actually... Lol, guys, you're going to laugh. I broke my collarbone falling off a bike in Amsterdam about a month ago. It's really funny. And then I went to the hospital and I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm really bad at being Dutch. And the doctor was like, if you were Dutch, you wouldn't have fallen off.
No, they're really good at bicycling, which you clearly are.
Sorry, I had to share. That's really funny.
That's fine.
So, first of all, we've always been saying someone needs to beat Max at his own game. Everyone has been saying it since Max rose to the top of the ranks. Someone has just not got it in their heads that this is finally what we've been asking for. Someone to actually hold their ground and say, no, actually, I'm ahead, so you can move out of my way for once. And it's really nice to see this kind of elbows out driving that we've been missing for so long. I've said it before on this podcast, actually, because everyone for a couple of years just went, my battle's not with Max. I'm not going to waste tyres on this. I'm going to let him past.
And
now,
Abu
regarding
Dhabi
the
last
penalty,
year, Abu Dhabi last year, he held his ground. Yeah.
And it's really nice to see it. And it's not always going to fall Max's way. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. And that's part of the joy and excitement of it. No, because we get to argue about whether the stewards were right. So on that note, were the stewards right? So in the official notes and the press release, etc., they said we would normally give a 10-second penalty for this. Hence why we saw Lawson get the 10-second penalty for doing the exact same thing. But they said because it was lap 1, turn 1, they considered that a mitigating circumstance, and therefore they turned the penalty into 5 seconds.
Fine.
Now,
That's consistent.
I
That is
understand
consistent.
the logic.
Yeah.
I think it's a completely flawed outcome because it was no punishment at all. We can say, yeah, well, Red Bull finished less than 5 seconds behind McLaren, so they would have won the race. No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't, because if Max was behind Piastri at turn 1, as it was going to be anyway, had that incident not occurred, like I said, most people are putting their money on Piastri to lead that race till the end anyway.
I think Verstappen loses in nearly every scenario here. His only chance was to not biff the start. So look, when we talk about like skill, Verstappen is very consistent, but something went wrong on that start. That's why Piastri was on alongside. So we talk about, can drivers start well? Norris came under a lot of fire for not starting well, not getting off the line well. Verstappen got off the line poorly and lost turn 1. The second Piastri was alongside him on the inside line, it was over. Like you know, when you have the Piastri situation like that into a left-right chicane, you know that basically you're going to be heading for the inside line on that chicane, on the second one. On the second turn, you know you're heading for the apex, and good luck, everyone on the right-hand side. I turn now. I'm turning. Good luck. So Piastri had that. Verstappen's only chance was to play this silly, silly game that the FIA have invited by talking about who's ahead at the apex. And here's the key. Here's the key thing. Other drivers have not been aware, have not been looking out for the fact that Verstappen just lets off the brake. He doesn't brake late. If he was braking late, you could predict that and you could go, oh, okay, he's braking later. I'm going to wait. We're going to play a game of chicken. What he does is he brakes and then he lets off the brake to make sure that he's ahead at the apex. And when he's on the inside line, that's particularly devastating because then he's forcing the driver on the outside out, but he can say, well, I was ahead at the apex. Yeah, because you stopped braking. Here, I think if you look at the slow-mos, click through frame by frame, Piastri did something that Hamilton didn't do. Piastri does something that Norris didn't do, which is that he saw that coming and also let off his brake. So I think Piastri saw that, played the same game that Verstappen played and was ahead at the apex and then just fully headed to the exit. So Piastri was never, ever in a million years going to leave any racing room for Verstappen there. And Verstappen knew there wouldn't be any racing room, but he tried to play for the foul. He tried to play for the, oh no, I got forced off. So technically, Verstappen could have cranked the steering on and made the corner with a little bit of brake. But he was always onto a loser because that tactic that Verstappen has had over the rest of the field for years now, Piastri is onto. Right, who do we go to first? Right, okay. I've been talking for a long time there. Sorry. Okay, Scott and then Stuffeyy. Scott and then Antonia, sorry.
That's fine. I can speak for
you be both. Yeah.
Take the floor, mate.
No, I totally agree with you, Spanners. Piastri, you'll see because of his trajectory of his car, once Max bowed out of the corner, it took him straight to the apex of turn 2. So Piastri did exactly that, rolled off the brake, and Max took it to even more of an extreme though, to ensure that he could look like he had made the apex ahead of him because he was carrying so much speed. I mean, if Max tried to make that apex of turn 2, there's no way. I mean, they would have almost had to come to a stop to try and make the right-hander. That's what Piastri also said as well. So yeah, for so long, he's cleverly allowed the stewards to make decisions for him, and he's come top trumps in most of those scenarios because no one has known how to play these rules as well as Max does. But now there's a driver. Clearly, it's the first time actually. Okay, they collided in Abu Dhabi, but Max was making a send from nowhere. This is the first time Piastri and Verstappen have truly gone wheel to wheel for something that matters, and Piastri has come out on top. But I will just end my point here, heading on to Antonia, but I just don't like these racing rules. Can I just reiterate that?
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
What is just, I hate talking about this. The racing should not be over after one corner. It shouldn't. I mean, there's not to say that with these cars they would have gone side by side for that much longer anyway, but they should be able to make it through the damn first corner side by side respectfully. Is that too much to ask for? Don't think so.
But that's the thing. It is too much to ask for from someone with Max's driving style and Piastri, who knows exactly the type of opponent he's going up against. And in many ways, I don't think the Oscar cares who he's going up against, and that is what makes him so steel-faced when competition is right up against him. But let's not pretend that these drivers don't know exactly what they're doing going into these very familiar circuits. Max will have known full well that with the line he had, he wouldn't have been able to come out ahead by turn 2.
No, 100%. Yeah. So he had to play the referees. That is 100%. That's what he was doing. He was going.
And Oscar will have known as well that he had that line. They know. They've done this thousands of times on a simulator.
No. In soccer terms, he was going for a foul. Like he was pretending to trip over the outstretched leg of the defender and then claiming a penalty. Scott.
I just want to touch on the penalty itself again. On one hand, I agree the penalty was correct, but I don't necessarily agree in the severity of it. However, I also don't think necessarily a 10-second penalty to Max was also correct in this scenario. I don't like the idea, as we saw also with Max in Mexico, how he's allowed and afforded the opportunity to pull out a gap when he's illegally held on to that position. What is so wrong under the safety car as well? I understand you had the Yuki and Gasly crash going on, but they were out of the race pretty quick. It was easy for us to see, okay, they're out of the race. We don't need to investigate that straight away. Let's focus on this turn 1 incident because they're under safety car conditions. Let's swap the positions there. That's a penalty enough in itself, especially with the dirty air that is so prevalent now. And it would have been tricky. It was all about that first corner, of course, getting ahead, as we know. And Max was afforded the opportunity until his first pit stop to pull out a gap and hurt Piastri's strategy in his race. I'm not an advocate for this. what is so wrong when it's so obvious as well to just issue, like it was in Mexico, it should have been a drive-through straight away, removes him from the scenario for his foul.
Yeah, they don't do it.
Same here.
It's worth noting that the stewards don't give a swap order. So they don't have a penalty where they go swap positions.
No, they should allow the whole rule kind of changed, didn't it? Where now it's on the onus of the teams and the drivers to make that decision. If they don't do it and the stewards deem them at fault, then they get a penalty. But I feel like in this scenario, this specific scenario, it's just so simple, especially with the safety car. We had the perfect point and opportunity for them to swap. I don't see what's so wrong with that.
This is the thing, and I want to move on from this because I feel like I'm just going to be complaining the whole time.
That's what we do here.
But it's just not in good racing spirits. It's so malicious and just, it's not enjoyable to watch. A lot of Red Bull fans have been saying after this today, it's not nice to watch the race be decided by a penalty. But in my opinion, the race result wasn't decided by the penalty. This maneuver at the first corner where neither of them could give each other enough room and they both decided to do the equivalent, like you said, of
just race
rolling
normally
around on the floor. It sucks the fun out of it for everybody.
Well, Verstappen can't race normally. He doesn't race normally.
The stewards then are deciding when to insert themselves and when not. Like you said, they don't have this swap order, so they can't say, okay, 5-second penalty and give the place back. But then they also decide to insert themselves in other ways, like, oh, we're actually going to make it 5 seconds because we think this time it's actually kind of okay. And that's what I really struggle with, is they can't tailor their decisions to a situation but only half do it, and that's what results in these really skewed outcomes where kind of nobody is happy here. Justice, quote quote, was not served, and also the Red Bull fans are peeved too. It just doesn't work, and doing things by half measures, as the referees of the sport who have already come under so much fire recently, it doesn't work. It just doesn't.
Okay, I feel like years and years ago, in this kind of situation, the inside driver had the line, the outside driver had to yield and then would have to give up that place. I feel like that was completely normal. This thing of what happens at that chicane is quite a modern thing. So Verstappen has had an impact on the sport in the same way that before him, Verstappen had that Hamilton had, that Schumacher had, where they start doing something that sets them apart from the crowd, and then the newer generation comes through. So with Schumacher, it was being fit, and it was treating Formula One like a sport. So he came in, and sorry, this is going to offend a lot of people, but a lot of the time Schumacher was fighting bums. Schumacher was an athlete, and he was fighting people who were just rolling out of the pub, and in many cases out of the police station. Like, that literally happened. And then by the time he ended his career, he was driving against professional athletes. Lewis Hamilton entered the sport in a period where his braking technique was just godlike compared to the people he was racing against. Now, all the kids coming through can brake like that. And also the sport doesn't necessarily lean towards that particular braking technique as something that sets you apart. Verstappen changed the game in just going, oh, well, you don't have to be a gentleman. Sorry, Holland, but Max Verstappen is not a gentleman. Sorry, Holland, but Max Verstappen is not burdened by being a sportsman. He doesn't really care about sporting etiquette. He just wants to play those rules. And he came into a generation of drivers who kind of played by the rules a little bit. And he stunned them. And they were like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. And the stewards looked at the rule book and said, yeah, you can. You can do that. But he might already be experiencing smart drivers that come in and go, oh, well, we can also do that. Like, thanks, Max. Thanks for setting the trend of going, we will do everything to the limit and we will make the stewards make the decision. Now there's going to be a generation of drivers there. When Verstappen's 35, 40 years old, they're all going to be doing that if the stewards and the rules don't change it. So yeah, Piastri has seen what Verstappen's done, and to me, this is one of the things where you go, well, he's smart. I don't have to jump out of his way. That's what he said in Abu Dhabi. I don't have to jump out of your way. I'll just let you hit me, and then actually by the rule book, everyone else goes, I don't want to risk having damage. So if you look at like Sainz, that's an example in the last race where, he held his ground, Tsunoda hit him, and he was out of the race. But in Abu Dhabi, Piastri decided to go, well, no, Verstappen's made a habit of going, I'll do this and you jump out of my way. I'm not going to. Here, he said Verstappen makes a habit of just not braking or lifting off the brakes and being ahead of the apex. I'm going to beat you at that game. And he has. So Verstappen might have found his match here a little bit in Piastri.
Well, we've seen Piastri already show his racing chops, like in the 2 years prior to this. He's made some great overtakes. He's not afraid, no matter what your status is, to make moves and pull off audacious moves as well. And I think the key here as well is that the relationship between Piastri and Verstappen is completely the opposite to what Norris is and Verstappen. Norris has been in the sport longer, so he's also become very good friends with Verstappen. Okay, yes, that relationship may have soured a little bit off track because he knows that Verstappen isn't going to treat him like a friend on track. But Piastri has no attachments, has no really personal connections to Verstappen off track. He is racing for those wins. He's racing for that championship. And he doesn't care. He's going to treat him just like any other driver, use the rules to his advantage. And well, Lando again today, I just want to kind of maybe go back to Lando because I think we ignored it. Lando again showed today that he still has a lot to learn when it comes to actual racing, which is crazy to think. I mean, I was head in hands when I saw Lando Norris foul twice in a row to overtake Lewis Hamilton and not.
Oh my goodness!
That DRS move, the switch back of Lewis, the DRS. Anyone who didn't actually tune into the race will know where the DRS.
Go on, describe this one, Scott.
Down the back straight. There's 3 DRS zones. One in the middle sector, which doesn't matter too much. There's one at the last sector, down towards the last corner. This is where you saw Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen in the past play DRS games. And the last DRS detection zone for the start-finish straight, to avoid those silly games that Leclerc and Verstappen had in 2022.
Hamilton and Verstappen.
No, this was... No,
they... Oh, sorry, 22. Yes, right. Yes, sorry.
Stopping on the brakes and so forth. They had that in 22. And they, to avoid any of this for safety reasons, they moved the DRS detection round the last corner. So if you overtake into the last corner, it's pretty much a detriment to yourself because that start-finish straight is long enough with DRS for the driver you've just overtaken to come straight back at you. That's exactly what Lewis Hamilton did twice in a row because Lando stupidly decided to not learn his lesson. It took him 3 times of asking before he actually learned. And you're just thinking, if that's Piastri or Verstappen, like, what chance have you got?
My issue is it shouldn't have even happened once. He should have known exactly where those detection zones are because that is part of your job. You should know I mean, come on. You have one job and it's to know the circuit that you are currently about to do 50 laps of. So when he's coming up behind Lewis Hamilton, someone who he knows he has superior pace to, but also knowing how powerful DRS is, he should have been able to calculate where best to make that move happen. And we saw some excellent overtakes, various places on the track, for example, where Piastri and Albon
Hamilton
both did those gorgeous sweeping overtakes. Stunning, right? Because they knew exactly where to make it happen. They had the grit to do so and the talent to execute it. It's not that hard, and it comes down to being able to make educated and calculated decisions behind the wheel that aren't just the result of you having the faster car.
Just a slightly broader general point in that, Piastri had that overtake on Hamilton. There was a 20-lap tyre delta on that, and I think at the moment F1 has a real problem with there not being any kind of tyre offset. There's not really any kind of strategic options at the moment. So we really need Piastri, who's the best driver in the best car on that race, against a struggling Hamilton in the 3rd best car with a 20-lap delta offset to pull off those kind of great overtakes. And we're really not in a place this season, Scott, where I think this season is in trouble because for whatever reason, the tyres are just lasting for forever.
We have circuits that just I mean, Bahrain was the outlier here because it was a very high abrasive circuit. Has kind of never been relayed, I don't think. I think there was a stat that the surface is older than Kimi Antonelli or something, which was quite funny. But that showcased how important strategy and tyre offset is in F1, especially with the regs and how close the cars are. I mean,
the closeness of the cars is a big thing. Yeah,
they're highly developed now. They're throwing off more dirty air. I know that word gets used a lot, but it truly is. Piastri stated in his interview afterwards that he was feeling dirty air from the lap cars ahead from as far as 4 seconds back. That is, I mean, obviously Jeddah's a very high-speed circuit, but that's the state at the moment we're in because the cars are so developed in this last year. But we need tyre offsets. We need a considerable different strategies. We had one stop again this race, even though we're a step softer. We had similar in Suzuka. Melbourne potentially could have been the same as well. China was the same. I mean, Bahrain, one race where we've really seen on-track overtakes. I know it's not the be-all and end-all, but even a mix-up in strategies makes things interesting.
Now, Scott, I've gone full. I need overtakes. So it's like,
I think I'm like that as well at the moment, and I'm normally a very optimistic and positive guy. And
5 years ago,
like, where are we going to get that?
I know. 5 years ago, I was gatekeeping a lot, and I was like, hey guys, come on. I know sometimes there's no overtakes and it looks like nothing's happening, but you just need to watch it better. I've moved, like how I used to enjoy E.T., but now I couldn't watch it. Even Logan's Run, one of my favourite films as a kid, I'd watch that now and I'm like, get on with it. Jeez. Yeah, just beat that robot guy and go to the Outlands. Now I do want a bit of overtaking. I'm sorry.
I think we can all agree Lando didn't need to pit today. Those hard tyres could have just gone on and on to the end of the race. What lap did he pit? 36, 37?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He could have gone on to the softs, and people are saying, no, the softs wouldn't have lasted. Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think everyone was surprised by how much. So early in the race, on the high fuel, there was a risk that some of the tyres would go off. So here's I said Piastri did 8 things right and 2 things wrong. So the 2 things wrong is a little bit scruffy, I think, in Q3 and probably could have got pole. Okay, fine. He made up for that later with a great start. The other thing was, at the end of that first stint, he couldn't keep up with Verstappen when Verstappen decided. So normally in that first kind of stint, everyone's managing their tyres, see how long they can get it going. But because of the 5-second penalty, Verstappen decided, no, I'm going to try and pull a gap and let's see what I can do. Piastri then couldn't keep up. So from them doing like 33s, Piastri did actually drop into the 34s. And at the end of that medium stint, he did start dropping off, which is really convenient for any middle-aged commentators who've been, talking about this narrative about Piastri struggling in tyre management. But if they'd have had to push that stint 10 laps longer, I think it would have got worse. But apart from that, there was no real drop-off.
It was that first sector which really cost Piastri. I was watching the timing screens.
Yes,
and he was losing on average around 3 tenths per lap to Verstappen in that first sector, and he'd recover it on the remainder of the track where there wasn't so many turns. The first sector had, of course, turns 1 and turn 2, and then you had the most change of direction through that first sector where actually Max was quick in all of qualifying through that first sector. So the Red Bull was strong in clean air, and there's only so long, even with no deg, that you're going to be able to last on those tyres before you're just sliding around a bit more with the dirty air. But yeah, he did struggle, and that McLaren, we've said before, it's not this all-supreme car. It is very quick in clean air, but in dirty air, there's still a lot of work that both Lando and Oscar have to do to pull out performances.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy in quali to simulate a perfect lap because, like we said earlier, you can have the tow, you can have near perfect conditions, you can get the slipstream and then cut away just before your brakes start getting angry with you. One thing that I found really interesting with the McLaren was how well it handled the tyres, actually, especially compared to the Red Bull, for example, who weren't running as high downforce as they were. And the reason that I think that balanced out actually a bit more is because if you look at the Ghost Lap, which, like Stuffeyy was saying, I really recommend
the Ghost Lap
you
was
look at.
amazing, yeah.
so interesting. The most interesting thing for me was looking at the braking. If you see how late Max braked compared to Piastri, it was ridiculous. And then Piastri then caught up because he could pick up the throttle earlier. But how pointy Max likes that Red Bull, I think compensates for the downforce differences with the setup in the McLaren this weekend, just because it was so on the nose that actually in the end, it ended up pretty even in tyre distribution and deg.
Okay, so when I looked at that Ghost Lap, it was so interesting. If you can find it, you have to go and find it. And through the high speed, left, right, like the high downforce corners, you could see how much the McLaren was catching up. The most interesting thing I found, Stuffey, was as sim racers, like I'm pretty decent when we have the F4, F3 where, yeah, there's a little bit of aero, but it's mostly down to mechanical grip and you're feeling the weight transfer through your hands. When I watched the onboards, even from like Hamilton or anyone else, I suddenly realized why I'm not good once we step up to the Indy or the Mercedes that they have in iRacing or the Super Formula, because you have to trust the downforce so much. It's nothing to do with your hands or the weight transfer. It's all about just knowing that you can throw it in. And watch an onboard on a lap around the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. It looks like the drivers are going to crash multiple times through the circuit, and somehow the car sticks.
Yeah, it's really evident to see kind of the different driving styles and also the approach that McLaren have been taking. I think they've been we've heard obviously Lando say that the car is a lot trickier to drive this year. Piastri is as kind of stone-faced as he always is, doesn't show any emotion, but they've run a much higher downforce package than the top teams at Bahrain and here, yet they've been on pole position and 100th of a second off of pole. Only a toe from Max's teammate was the difference. And it showcases that there's still more potential and pace, in my opinion, in that McLaren at the moment. Max is truly showing what the driver can do to make the difference. But maybe Piastri and Norris, obviously we know Norris is struggling more than Piastri, but there's more that they can do with the setup of that car to extract performance from it. And maybe Max could get more out of that car with how he's able to control that Red Bull, as we see. It's quite erratic sometimes watching the onboards, the twitchiness and that. But what's evident is that he is just so in control of that car on the brakes through corners. And the last corner in itself was just the amount. I mean, he wasn't even on shot. When you watch that Ghost Lap, he's well behind Piastri. And then all of a sudden, he shoots through under braking as Piastri is quite conservative. Piastri starts to gain a little bit as Antonia said, with that extra downforce, he can pick up the throttle earlier. But Max just is truly making the difference at tracks where that Red Bull comes into that narrow window of performance. But I still think there's a lot more from McLaren. And will we see, if improvements from the other teams arrive, will McLaren start to try and eke more performance out of that car?
I'm interested to see. I think one thing that's been really interesting thus far this season is how low a lot of teams have been having their ride height. A lot of the downforce of an F1 car comes from the floor. It's about a third overall distributed between the front, rear, and floor. And we've been seeing a lot more teams relying on it a lot more than they were before. And especially in a car like the Red Bull, where, like I said, Max has a very specific setup that a lot of drivers really struggle with. I think that's why a lot of the Red Bull second drivers have been struggling with it a lot.
We've got to Red Bull second drivers, have we?
And I think it's really disappointing today that we didn't see how Tsunoda handled it around this track.
But we have to ask, whose fault is it? Whose fault is it? Antonia, Tsunoda versus Gasly. Whose fault is it? I will say, tread softly, for you tread on my dreams.
I'm not playing into your weird little obsession right now. I've been pushing against this for years.
Yeah, you're anti-Tsunoda. You're a Tsunoda hater, full on. You're a full-on Tsunoda hater. Yeah, you always have been, yeah.
I think like there's just some weird like short king bromance going on.
I think as a long person, you just cannot respect people with less long bones. That's how I feel.
There's less I give them proportional respect.
Them, as if I'm not them. I'm them. You're talking to me.
No, I mean textbook. What was that? I'm sorry. That was wild to me. That whole again, they know that corner. This is what gets me, and it really ticks me off because there was absolutely zero self-awareness. There's a sense, it's called the sixth sense of your body, called proprioception. It's the idea that if I put my hand somewhere randomly and close my eyes, I know where my hand is in relation to my body. And with F1 drivers, a big part of their job is knowing where the car is in relation to them. They always say that it feels like an extension of their own body. Where was that energy today from Mr. Yuki Tsunoda and Mr. Pierre Gasly? Both of them.
No. I'm 100%. It's Yuki's fault.
No, I agree. I do. But I don't think that he was entirely a passenger in that, to be honest, Pierre.
Okay,
but it was Yuki's fault. It was 100% his fault.
So there's a couple of Austria scenarios. Turn 4, I think we had like Perez versus Russell, and you go, okay, yes, the inside car shouldn't steer or understeer out into the outside car, but the outside car has a choice. So we said this with Sainz in the last Grand Prix against Tsunoda. Actually, Sainz could have jumped off the track, couldn't he? When Tsunoda ended up getting on the throttle too quickly and hitting Sainz again, I did blame Tsunoda for that. But Sainz could have gone, okay, discretion, better part of valor. I'll jump out of the way. He's done the Senna thing. Okay, so what Tsunoda's done 2 races in a row is the Senna thing that we all admire, and the Verstappen thing that we all admire. Either get out of my way or I'll crash. And the 2 drivers in both incidents have just gone, no, I'm entitled to this bit of racetrack. And I think they're right. I think Gasly today was entitled to stay 4 wheels on the racetrack. And good, he was right. But in the end, that ended up with Tsunoda clattering him from behind.
I think a part of that issue as well is what we were just saying about this Red Bull, about having to just throw it into the corner and put it where it is and hope for the best. Tsunoda will still be learning the limits of this Red Bull because it will be a lot different to what he's used to, obviously. Man.
I just think Tsunoda thought he owned the corner and he didn't. And so EJ just said, so Yuki couldn't have gone much tighter due to the walls and stuff. Yeah, but he could have gone slower. You could have gone slower.
He didn't need to throw it in and hope for the best.
No, you could have gone slower and not gone all the way to the outside. Like, that was a choice. Stuffey.
Yeah, I've just watched it back because I was just trying to remind myself of it. And it's a tricky one because it's the start of the race. I feel like if I do put more blame on Yuki, because I think there's a point of where you have to go, okay, even though these cars are as large as they are and visibility is an issue, Gasly is more than ahead, pretty much. I mean, he's got his rear wheels, it's front wheel to rear wheel, and Gasly is there. And I think Yuki, to try and hold on to that position, is a bit wishful thinking. Gasly also maybe could have given a bit more of a wider line. Gasly says, I was trying to keep my wheels there. But then on the other hand, that's also the curb. We saw lots of curb strikes there. The actual entry to it, we saw the front of the floor, Lando, Max Verstappen, Piastri, they all had moments there. Of course, Lando the biggest. But I think Yuki ultimately could have scrubbed off more speed. He was as tight as possible, but he's ultimately drifted into Gasly there. However, can I just say, I think it was still a positive weekend for Yuki, even though he crashed in the last corner.
Yeah, it wasn't Lawson. Yeah, it wasn't a Lawson-y. What would Yuki fans have asked for this weekend? We'd have said Q3.
I think I think every weekend Q3 for Yuki is a positive. As long as there's some form of progression and him feeling more and more comfortable in the car, then that's all you can ask for in that second Red Bull. That's what every other blooming second Red Bull driver has struggled with. So a low bar, but good, I think, for Yuki, even though he crashed out.
I think another key takeaway from this weekend, speaking about the issue with the second Red Bull seat, one thing it's really clarified for me is the extent that Lawson has just completely folded in on himself. And I think it's such a shame. I really do. Lawson was nowhere this weekend. Hadjar was running circles around him. I will say, Hadjar, 10 out of 10. He's really making a positive impression. Great job he's doing. But I really find it difficult to watch in a way. I've got to the point now where we've seen Lawson get 2 races in this car. And then in what was, I think, quite a brazen publicity stunt, they put Yuki in for their last race with Honda at the Japanese Grand Prix before giving Lawson, let me speak, before giving Lawson a proper chance at the seat. In my opinion, a contract goes both ways. If you are letting a driver be given this brilliant opportunity to race for the first team, he's promoted, how exciting. You need to give them some coaching, some time, some support, help them in the role that you've given them. You cannot plonk a driver in a seat like that and go, where's my results? Hello. And you can see the extent that it's knocked Lawson because he's sat in this V-carb or however many letters it is, and he's really fighting for it, which he wasn't before.
Yeah. Anyway, I feel like it's Yuki's fault, and I feel sad, and I would just like a solid weekend with a nice top 5. Is that too much to ask? Your teammate finished P2. Just give us a top 5. You don't need to chin Gasly lap 1. That was an Alpine. You are in a Red Bull. You are in the car that came in pole position. You don't have to rush it. You will get past that Alpine. Come on, Yuki. Give me something. Give me something. Ferrari. Oh, Ferrari. Okay. So, a lot of positives for Ferrari this weekend, except they were meant to be title contenders, and they haven't got there. And they were meant to be giving my favourite driver, Lewis Hamilton, a platform to be brilliant. And frankly, he's not being at all brilliant. It's going badly. So, the first thing I want to say is there was always a Ferrari-shaped hole ahead of Mercedes and behind the front two. And now I think Ferrari have filled that. They're in that space now. And they've kind of shown how far Mercedes is behind. But it is all Leclerc. Hamilton is at sea. He is nowhere right now.
Is Ferrari plural? Is it made up of 2 Ferraros? Anyway,
Ferrari. It's Ferrari. If you
the
want to
Ferraro of Charles Leclerc is absolutely phenomenal. Mr. Ferraro is doing such a brilliant job in that car, finally extracting a baseline level of success that's not sporadic top 3s. It's consistent, and that's finally where they've worked to be for so long. But in the other half of the garage, we can all see it plainly now. It's not adding up. Something is not there between Lewis and his car.
We could try denial. We could try just being fully in denial.
You can. I'm too young for that.
Oh, yeah, good point.
I just think, and this is really harsh. This is, sorry. Close your ears, spanners. Okay. I think Lewis is completely unadaptable and is at a stage in his career after so many years at Mercedes.
In his life, Antonia.
How old is he? Like 40?
Yeah, 40's old, man.
Wow.
You said that with a grimace on your face as well.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm 44. I can't adapt to Jack.
But I think he's at a stage in his career where he is not adaptable anymore. He's not moldable anymore. And I hate to say this. I love Lewis and I love Ferrari. It's not going to happen. Yeah, it's not going to work. He's not going to magically fit in that car like Play-Doh because the Play-Doh is set. He's old.
Stuffy, I'm where Antonia is right now, and it hurts.
It sucks.
No, but someone said to me, but pre-season you said 6 months for any driver changing team. I'm like, yeah, any driver, not Lewis. Obviously not Lewis. Lewis needs to hit the ground running. And man, Scott, you don't know. Like, you two don't know. Like, Antonia, you're well behind your peak. You're like pointlessly young. But Stuffy, you're right in your peak right now. Like, you will never feel more vital and vibrant than you do right now. It only goes downhill because right now you don't know what you have to lose. Like, you guys have got no idea how much you have to lose in life. You just think, oh, it's brilliant. Let's just go for everything. Let's just risk everything. When you get to 44, you kind of go, oh, I've got stuff. Like, also, if I dedicate a whole bunch of time to learning this brand new skill, I'll have to like discount the other brilliant things in my life. Whereas, like Antonia, you're still young enough to learn to juggle, for example. I would never, at my stage in life now, bother learning to juggle, but you have the time to do that.
To be fair, I'm learning Dutch, which is just as clowny.
Oh my God, why?
It's so hard. I'm a German speaker, so I thought piece of cake, right? But they...
Entschuldigung bitte.
Excuse you, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dutchies, love you so much. Thank you for letting me stay in your country. Hate the language so much. Don't get it. Really don't like. Anyway, I understand it because I can speak German, but then it's kind of like if German had an American accent and like you were a tomboy. That's the best way I can explain. Anyway, I can't remember my point anymore.
Oh, that you were learning
about
Dutch.
Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah.
Right. It's too little too late for me. I think Lewis should have left Mercedes 2023. A couple of years ago, when it became clear that they weren't going to bounce back the way that they expected from the incident. And I think that Lewis is not adapting quickly enough for what Ferrari need, because the car is clearly there. And with all of what's become clear with Kimi Antonelli joining Mercedes and George taking on the role he has so effectively, which is the first driver who's feeding back, communicating, driving consistently, driving well. Lewis wasn't doing that last year. George is doing a considerably better job than him, and I do think it might be time for the conversation of...
It might be. We might be getting close.
Lewis washed?
Scott, was ist eine Meinung?
No idea what that means.
What's your opinion?
I just want to touch on Hamilton. I disagree, Antonia. I don't think that Ferrari's still a good car. I think what we've got is a scenario akin to Red Bull, where we have a driver who is extremely good, who has been at that team for multiple years and knows how to drive that Ferrari engine and that car. He is wrangling the absolute neck out of that Ferrari at the moment, Charles Leclerc. And I don't think there is praise for Charles, but I don't think, because he's not sticking it on pole position and because the car isn't there, I don't think he's quite getting the praise that it deserves. I mean, his first stint today was lovely. He went the longest on the medium tyres.
Yes, it was so good. And he was doing 32s, Scott, as well.
I was seeing purples.
Couldn't believe it, yeah.
Kimi wasn't lapping any faster than him on fresh tyres.
Yeah,
I was like, whoa, where has this come from? And I think you're hearing a lot of complaints on the radio of Lewis, and I'm thinking, this is like I'm listening to the second Red Bull driver. They're struggling with the car, complaining about the car sliding around the place. And I think Lewis, yes, his age is a factor, that he's not as adaptable as he used to be. That's just biology. But I think this current era of cars, Lewis has never got to grips with them. How bulky they are, how laboured they are for the corners. That's not what Lewis is used to. I think it'll be a reset for him next year. But yeah, I think credit, definitely, more praise needs to go to Charles, because he is getting results
100%.
out of a dogged Ferrari, in my opinion. And Lewis is truly showing where that car should be.
I understand where you're coming from, but I think you're completely wrong.
Oh, Scott, burn.
Just because Carlos wasn't this far behind. Full stop. He was still getting podiums. He wasn't on Charles' level. That's because he's not as good of a driver as Charles.
Carlos had driven the Ferrari for what, 3-4 years?
I don't think
Lewis has
got
races.
7 championships under his belt.
That's a very different amount of length of time that Lewis has driven this car after driving the Mercedes for 10, 12 years.
Just because Lewis isn't adaptable, it doesn't mean he's a bad driver. He should be able to lap what Carlos Sainz was lapping. I don't think that's a debate, to be honest. I think, yes, he's unfamiliar. Yeah, there's going to be an adjustment period. He's still one of the best drivers of all time. You know, like it's like saying, you know, like, okay, I drive a Beamer, right?
Of course you do.
Right, leave me alone. Leave me alone. I know what an indicator is. I use it sometimes when I'm feeling whimsical, right?
You disconnect it before you drive, but okay.
I'm not going to be as comfortable if I hop in a VW after never driving one before. Fine. That doesn't mean that I'm crashing this car constantly, for example. It just means that I'm not going to be as good at, nailing the apex of the roundabout, for example. Lewis hasn't lost all of his ability. The Ferrari isn't a complete shitbox. And I think to say that it's not... Oh, I'm so sorry.
No,
sorry.
we'll let it ride. Kids, if you've learned that word from Auntie Antonia today, I do apologise.
I think it's harsh to say that the Ferrari isn't a good car, because I think it is. Otherwise, it wouldn't be on the podium. I also think that the Red Bull is a good car. It's just difficult to drive unless you know it very well. I think that the Ferrari has the capacity to be two drivers on the podium every other weekend. Maybe not every weekend. They're not the best car. But I don't think it's as bad as the Red Bull problem.
They're the third best car, in my opinion. And the fourth best car is Mercedes. And I continue my admiration of George Russell this season. So this weekend, he had no tools to go fighting against the top guys, but he went and fought against them anyway. And yes, he ultimately lost out. And I think, Leclerc being faster and the Ferraris filling in that Ferrari-shaped hole that I talked about before. And also, Norris coming through the pack. But Russell identified at every point what was going on with his car, was smart, and maybe this time did open himself up to a bit of graining, but recognised that and was calling for the suicide tyre swap at the end. Hey, guys, do you think, and I think this was like 4 laps from the end, should I pit again and just throw away this entire race result, which was a little bit silly, but he was just talking about like his tyre was opening up, which did show that, the top 3 teams were fairly comfortable on tyre wear. Mercedes were struggling. But I think this race shows you how good Russell has been doing and maximising his results to get the results from the first 4 or 5 races. I think this race, to me, is a little bit more representative of where I thought Mercedes would be. Scott?
Yeah, I'm really intriguing about the tyres, because I didn't expect Mercedes to be this slow and suffer with the tyres as they did. I think arguably you could say they were one of the worst teams on the grid with tyres.
Well, in the top half, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, their overall pace is always going to be ahead of a stake F1 as an example. But I think if you probably looked at the state of the tyres at the end of the race, in relative comparison, I mean, they really dropped off. I was really surprised about that. But George he's just quietly going about his business. He said something that I thought was brilliant at the start of the week, because he's the only driver who doesn't have a contract signed for next season. That's still up in the air. And of course, all the hoo-ha about, will Max stay? Will he won't stay? And will he go to Mercedes? And they asked George, and they said, well, you don't have a contract yet. Are you worried? Blah, blah, blah. And he said, no. He said, everyone can have a contract. He goes, you see drivers have a lack of performance and they lose their seat because of even when they've got a contract. And he said something that I thought was brilliant. And he said, a driver's currency is their performance. If you're performing, you have a lot of currency and you'll maintain your seat. And at the moment, I'm performing. That's all I'm focused on about this weekend, the weekend after. And I think he is absolutely nailing it at the moment in that Mercedes and getting the most he can.
George was one of the drivers of the weekend for me.
Agree.
And that sounds silly because he was nowhere in the race. But the way that he handled the tyre degradation, but also the way that he led the team, he communicated with them, the way that he drove and the role that he assumed, I think was exemplar and incredibly impressive. I think the way that Charles Leclerc is Mr. Ferrari, I do think that George is assuming the Mr. Mercedes role in a very impressive way. And in a difficult race scenario, he did an excellent job today.
Excellent. Let's move on to the podium. Okay, that was a fine Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. It gave us a lot of talking points. And as we get to the end of this show, all I will say is that now we are going to do our awards. But if you would like to support us on Patreon, and if you've got this far with just Antonia and Stuffeyy just yelling at me, then maybe you might look at our Patreon, because that is the only way that we are able to put out 8-9 shows a month, and that we are able to prioritize Missed Apex over other work. And the only reason that we are going to be out, in Miami, maybe Kota, maybe Montreal, that we're going to have a Silverstone event, the Patreon support basically empowers us to do this as a full-time endeavor, to push forward, to try and grow. So patreon.com/Missed Apex. You get an ad-free feed, join us in Discord, and just have that warm, fluffy feeling that if you didn't support Missed Apex, then the whole of iTunes top charts would be those big evil. No, they're not evil. But, it would be all like, the top funded websites, newspapers, magazines and stuff. And we are able to be the top independent F1 podcast in those charts because of you. Patreon.com/Missed Apex. So we're going to do our negative award, the Missed Apex award, and then we'll do the positive award so that we can end, on a high note. So we'll start off by asking who missed the Apex for you.
You missed the Apex.
Let's start with Antonia Rankin. Antonia, your main thing isn't this long-form habit of just chatting with middle-aged people and being grumpy about Formula One. No, you're a dynamic vertical scroll.
How dare you?
Vertical scroll star of TikTok and Instagram. How are things going in that content space?
Yeah, no, really good. Contrary to what this podcast might suggest about my ability to argue with middle-aged men, I
No,
like to
you
think
seem fine.
semi-successfully.
Yeah, you seem like you do okay.
I actually am a presenter. I actually do present stuff, and that's quite fun. And I really like it, which is always good. So, yeah.
Where should people go to follow you, Antonia?
On Instagram and on TikTok, I am Antonia.Rankin. And we have fun on TikTok. I treat TikTok like the little vent space for all of my opinions and teaching people stuff that they don't want to have teached to them. And then Instagram, we have a lot of fun on there too. So yeah, come say hi, because I like to think that it's nice.
I love your TikTok because you are essentially as grumpy as I am, but you dress it up in a lie of being vibrant and young and happy. But it's all with this sarcastic fallout thumbs up. So do follow Antonia by clicking the links in the show notes below. But who missed the Apex for you?
In a very literal sense, Max Verstappen, and not just for this one maneuver, because I don't think it was that serious, but the debate that it's opened up for me about the way in which drivers approach the sport, I think is very interesting in a way of trying to beat the regulations rather than their opponents. I think it opens up a really interesting and important wider debate.
But he missed it today.
It
didn't work.
You tell me. Christian Horner has a very compelling screenshot.
Okay, so that is my Missed Apex award is because Christian Horner. So Christian Horner gets my Missed Apex award because he keeps doing this where he'll present a printout that someone has obviously printed out for him that he then goes and he sits in his his Trumpian media circle. Sorry, but it's true. And he'll go, look, I've got this screenshot. And the screenshots of the outboards exist, yet you are still pushing this screenshot that is very selective of later in the corner where Verstappen is ahead. You must know that what you're doing is very, very easily disprovable, yet you think that you can just go out and change the narrative with your screenshot. It's wrong. It's weird. Anyway, that's my Missed Apex award. You can follow me by going to Instagram and searching for Spanners Ready, or searching for Spanners Ready on X or Blue Sky. Scott, hey mate.
Hey.
All right.
Yeah. Good.
What's up?
I'm all right.
You're right. Good. Earlier, you watched the race and you let other people watch the race with you
Through data and track map.
Yeah, but you...
Not live footage, copyright reasons, obviously.
No, but you put the camera on you and you were like, nah, don't listen to an ex-racing driver.
God.
You were like, don't listen to, someone who's won Grand Prix. Don't listen to someone who's, gone through the junior series. Just listen to Stuffeyy. No, you don't need to listen to expert analysis from Sky or F1 TV. Watch along with Scott.
I mean, lots of people,
Lots of people did it.
lots of people. Thankfully, I mean, it's the biggest compliment. They actually turn their TV coverage.
I can't
on
believe that.
You and
Yeah.
listen to me, and that's the biggest compliment in the world. So thank you, everyone who does tune in.
I think with the handicap of your accent, I think you've done really well.
Thanks, mate. Love you too.
To be fair, this is an all Essex podcast, isn't
Oh my
it?
gosh, it is.
It's an
For
all
international viewers,
Come
Essex,
on!
somewhere else, somewhere in the southeast.
Iceni for the win. Queen Boadicea would be very, very proud. But Scott, what is your channel and where can we find it? And people should definitely watch along the F1 race with you.
Yes, they should. My channel is Stuffeyy. If you don't know how to spell it, link will be in the show notes below. So head down there and drop me a subscribe and check in for the next few races. Just see what you're missing out and why so many people enjoy it. But my Missed Apex award this weekend. Can I have two?
You
Can I be
can, yeah,
greedy?
of course you can.
So the first one is the obvious one. No one said Lando. I mean, I feel like once again it wasn't just qualifying because he literally missed the apex. He was wide of that wall of turn 4, which caused him to run
Well,
out
he
wide.
hit it too much. I think that's what caused him to go out wide.
Well,
It was
the
slow on
exit
that
curve.
apex.
Yeah.
The exit curve, but the inside wall, he was wide of it. Everyone else was like centimeters away. He was more than that. And then also his lack of racecraft with Lewis. I just think
Yeah,
man,
that hurt,
that potentially cost him a podium today
Painful.
because he fell short of charging.
Okay.
at
Also,
the curve.
everyone else had to do the Lewis challenge. And basically, Norris failed the Lewis challenge. Piastri nailed it round the outside.
Charles Leclerc did it on George first time.
and also Verstappen dispatched Lewis. So, like, everyone else passed the Lewis. I just
Gatekeeper to the podium. Painful.
Oh no, but yeah, Norris keeps failing at these wheel to wheel. Like he took a long time to get past Leclerc last weekend as well. Yeah,
I think
And he should be cruising past.
yeah.
Yeah, and I just think Piastri is not even going to be concerned when hopefully we do eventually get them go wheel to wheel. I can't believe we're 5 races in and we still only seen him on the front row once, which was Melbourne. So Lando, please sort it out and provide us some entertainment, please. Secondly, I'm going to give it a broadcasting thing, which was Martin Brundle. I don't know if anyone saw this. I think it was in Quali. Can't remember the session. He actually suggested Jack Doohan brake check Alonso down the start finish straight. Now, some people will say it's tongue in cheek, and I don't really hold too many people to account with these kind of like comments, but I don't know. I feel like Martin Brundle, there's a couple of things he also said over this weekend. I just thought
I've got one. I've got
are you
one.
losing your touch a little bit,
No,
Martin?
I don't want to say that.
Attention as you used to. I don't know. It just Martin Brundle has been brilliant, but I feel like there's some things recently where I'm a bit like.
Well, we tend not to criticise the broadcast and stuff, but since you've brought this
No,
up,
that's exactly what I'm
Since you
doing.
started it.
So I think Brundle's done a thing that a lot of people do with Hamilton, in that Hamilton is held to a different standard somehow than other drivers. So there's one particular thing that got me. May I just say that Martin Brundle is a broadcast hero of mine. I feel like he saved us from Murray Walker. So please see that it's from a general place of love. But he called Verstappen's playing the referee around the outside, very clever, genius level. Like, he's always thinking, he's always looking for that extra thing. When Hamilton did it with the DRS, when he braked a little early, which, yeah, I'd agree, that might be a little dangerous, but he called that naughty. And it's the only worst thing he could have said was to call it cheeky or facetious. But to call that naughty, and then Verstappen's thing, where he's also playing those same rules and those same mind games, genius. And you just go, it's difficult to swallow.
I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, but since the whole thing of like Sky Sports hate Max Verstappen, they're so British biased, you always notice a little bit of like overcompensation.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And
That's
it gets quite noticeable where it's like you are just glazing Verstappen for breathing.
Cue the
and
comments.
But like it gets to a point where it's like, okay, it's a British broadcast. They're probably going to like the British drivers more. That's okay. You know,
Yeah.
it gets quite tiresome.
I'm already getting some heat for the comment of saving us from Murray Walker. I loved Murray Walker as well, but Murray Walker came from an era where it was, I just have to make this as exciting as possible. And as fairly uninformed viewers as we were in the 80s, the 80s is a real time, by the way, Antonia, and the 90s, we just didn't have the same information.
Did everyone really wear leggings? Was that a thing?
Mate, you should have seen me at the roller disco with my big fluffy socks in the 90s.
No image that I want to see.
Yeah.
Apologise right now.
Yeah. What would Spanners look like with a chimney on him? My goodness. But, yeah, in that time, it was all about the excitement. And then Martin Brundle came along and started pointing out, the points where Murray Walker would get stuff wrong and wouldn't, realise that, he'd get confused between different teammates and stuff. And Brundle was the first proper analyst in Formula One, who informed the viewers. And I think Martin Brundle educated a lot of the F1 viewing audience, which is why I'm reluctant. But I do think there might be a bit of a blind spot with Hamilton. So why was Hamilton naughty? And why was Verstappen a genius? But these are normal broadcasting things. People get in habits, people get in grooves. So who have we not done a Missed Apex award for? I think we've done it all. So are we moving on to the good thing now, aren't we, I think? So we get to be positive. So we say who hit the apex. This is our good thing award. So Antonia, who hit the apex for you?
The very specific moment in which Piastri performed that god-level overtake.
You're going to give it that, okay.
Swooping around those corners. It was so perfectly executed. And you see it in the replays. The way he just tucks in afterwards before that gorgeous sweeping corner. It's stunning. It's so perfectly done. It showed such calculation. I think it was just exemplar and a real evidence of how Piastri has been a little bit overlooked. And this is such a small thing, and it's really probably a really controversial opinion. I think Piastri would be so much more popular and people would believe in him so much more if he had the same personality as Lando Norris.
Oh, sorry. I mean, Piastri isn't trying to win the media.
I wasn't going to say that. I wasn't going there. He's really nice.
Piastri, he's not trying to media. He's not trying to do a Daniel Ricciardo, is he? He's not trying
a nasty boy, and he's not overconfident in the media, and he doesn't play games and whatever. And I think that's why he gets unfairly overlooked. And now people are finally going, yeah, I can't do that anymore.
But he's with awesome. The Drive to Survive generation, Ricciardo developed a lot of clicks for that by being a big personality, as did Lando Norris. And then there was like drama. Lewis Hamilton will provide drama by telling you everything he's feeling, and Horner as well, and the whole Red Bull garage will provide drama by being aggressive. Whereas Piastri is just, he's the kind of guy, you go, what happened after your race victory? And you say, yeah, I was so excited that I came home, I went upstairs and I threw my girlfriend on the bed, and then I vacuumed the spot that she was standing on. And that is just Piastri's general media persona.
No comment.
That's a really old joke, by the way. Scott, who hit the apex for you?
I'll give one, and then if it's not one, if you don't say the same one, I'll say another one, basically. I want two, because I'm being greedy today.
Do it.
First one is, I think it has to go to Carlos Sainz. I think he's finally finished in the top 10. It's been a great weekend for him, and he did a tremendous job in playing the team game to give his teammate Alex Albon the DRS to hold off, and also very well performing Isaac Hadjar, because he got Williams double points today. And I think Williams, supposedly for a team that are focusing solely on 2026, they've made a very good start to this season.
But they did say that they're turning the taps off of the wind tunnel. They said, that's it. We're done for 2025.
What, for this season?
Yeah.
Or next season?
No, for now. They're the first team that has just said, nope, we're done.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Like, they're all eggs in the basket for 26. So,
sure.
I mean, they need to reap the rewards while they can, I guess. But yeah, great qualifying from Sainz and a great race to round it off.
I think it goes without saying, most teams will be all eyes forward to 2026 right now. The amount of changes that it will bring especially with all of these crazy regulations in terms of the size of the cars. There will be so much research going into these cars from 2023, even as soon as they knew these regulations were coming. And we'll start to see a drop off of which teams have really, really pushed for this huge change and have stopped putting research in, because we'll just see teams like Haas do what they did in 2021 and just go, we don't care anymore. Sorry. And I think that's great. It's so exciting. And it builds up a lot of talk and a lot of predictions for next season. And I think that can only be a good thing.
I mean, yeah, I don't want to dwell on what happens with 26 too much, but could we see it could either provide us a brilliant rest of this season where teams decide to turn off the taps, and do we see a Haas develop and end up on the podium come the end of the season, or it just becomes quite bland and it's just too much Red Bull, McLaren at the front? I don't know. I'm a bit concerned about them putting a lot of teams putting sole focus on next season. No doubt there'll be probably a line that they've decided, a racetrack where if things don't work out for them, that's it. It's all eyes on 26. But hopefully it doesn't spoil the rest of this season for us.
And my good thing award is Hadjar. So Hadjar must have looked at Tsunoda and gone, oh, I'm doing all right. I'm sort of keeping up with him vaguely. And then he gets promoted and they go, okay, well, Lawson, that's a different thing. Oh, I've got him covered. I've absolutely got him covered. And I think at the moment, Visa Cash App, they've got a good car and Hadjar's doing great and he's outperforming Lawson. But you go, okay, I think if Tsunoda was there, I do think that Tsunoda would be doing better. But even if Hadjar's gap to Tsunoda had persisted and Tsunoda had not been promoted, I think Hadjar would still be my thing of the weekend quite often. So well done to him. And I think for him, the skies have opened up. It's like your biggest opponent went into the pits and now he's able to kind of breathe. There's Tsunoda's not there. He's got Lawson, who's very unsettled, who's really struggling, and he's looking really good. And it looks like they've found a way to accommodate his extra needs. You know, he needs a little bit more room, downstairs. And it looks like they've managed to accommodate the seatbelt for him there. He's got a little bit of drinks bottle issues. But yeah, Hadjar is looking like he could settle in and be one of the stars of 2025.
I was just going to say that was going to be my second thing if you didn't say it. So I'm so glad that you did.
Okay, good.
And yeah, I'm so glad that he's really hitting the ground running, especially after what could have been, he could have really got down in the dumps and just ruined this whole season for him after what happened in Australia. So he's bounced back brilliantly and excited to see more of him.
Go and follow my panel. Go and follow Scott Stuffeyy Tuffy by clicking the links in the show notes below. He does a bunch of other stuff, but really only the YouTube is worth bothering with. Follow Antonia Rankin. I think TikTok is still the main place to go and follow you. And go and follow Spanners. He's the best one. I think the best place to follow me right now is probably on X and on Blue Sky. But do make sure if you want to come and hang out with us in Miami or Silverstone, you email me spanners@missedapex.net. Subject line Miami or Silverstone. May 3rd. That's the main one. We've got a good crowd there. I'm really looking forward to hanging out with a bunch of you. And we will catch you next week. And there's going to be... there's going to be the Miami preview. We're going to be live from Talladega. There's going to be a NASCAR special as well. And then there's going to be a live sprint review from Miami, as well as an in-location Miami review. Until we see you next, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Missed Apex Podcast. Oh man, it's 20 past midnight. But we are all in Essex, so time to hit the club.